And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Liberty Show with Kevin Fortune. My name is Kevin Fortune, and you have tuned into the Liberty Show, a national platform where you, the citizen, can raise your voice of all things liberty. And tonight, we're going to discuss the year in review. This is the last month of the year. Boy, what a year it has been. And we're going to talk about some of the things, some of the outstanding episodes we've had, highlights, low points, just some of the current events, things that have come up in people's minds. So tonight, we have a special co-host, and that is Mr. Jared Morningstar, our producer, director, technical director, videographer, sound man, choreographer. He does it all. So, Jared, welcome. You're the co-host of the Liberty Show. Take us through the year in review.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here and glad to have had such an exciting and dynamic first year here with the podcast. It's been wonderful bringing everyone together, making some new connections, and being able to discuss such important issues with such a diverse and intelligent group of participants here. So I'm hopeful for where we're going, and I'm excited to get down to business here tonight and see everyone's memories and make some new ones too. So to start out with, I would love to just chat a little bit and hear what the Liberty Show means to you all, and why you keep coming back to this interesting podcast experiment we've put together. So anyone have any thoughts they'd like to share on that question? All right, David, you are up first.
Well, hello, everybody, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. The Liberty Show, I had no idea where we'd end up. And to say that all of a sudden we're live on radio at times, that's amazing where we've come in a year's time. And it is, Jared, like you said, the amazing minds of this group and their viewpoints. It's not only us being able to have a voice, but we've got ears to hear. And it's great to know what other people have on their minds as to what's important. So I look forward to this show where we can chime in and talk about things that we found amazing in the past year. I'm going to give one quote, and I want you to think who said this. Pig, pig, pig. That was none other than our friend Tim Smith. And with that, I'll pass the mic on to somebody else.
Wonderful, David. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's certainly been some interesting moments and some memorable quotes from these 17 shows we've produced so far. So yeah, some of the clips we're gonna play tonight, some of them are exciting and I think we can all sort of rally around them. Others are contentious. So it'll be nice to have another opportunity to debrief along some of these ideas that have been bubbling up as we've been going along here. So who's up next to share some thoughts? Kevin, you're the host. So you have the stage.
Well, one reason I like the Liberty Show because I get to be the host. No, actually, what I really love about this show is that we get so many different perspectives. It's not all one conservative or liberal, the left or right. It's not all one race or gender. It's so much diversity. But the other thing is we go beneath the surface. We don't just scrape and just mention things. We really go and break it apart. And that's very important. A lot of times, if you look at the news media, you just hear them make a statement, but they don't even analyze it, or they don't even, break it apart to what actually was said or really happened. But on this show, we really go sometime into depth. And for some people, that's a little uncomfortable because we're not used to that in our society. But I just want to bring that out, that this is it's exciting that people can raise their voice. When we listen at the TV, we hear what the television people said or whoever paid for the commercials, what they want to bring out. But here, people get to bring out their point of view. And I think that is so exciting.
Definitely so. Yeah, there's such an opportunity for more depth and more robust discussion when we actually have time to talk with each other, and it's not just a 10-second sound bit and our pundits sitting behind the news desk for their 3-minute segment on some issue that has way more complexity than can really be tackled in just a couple minutes. So yeah, that's I certainly resonate with that as well. So next up, we have Alyssa. Welcome.
Hey, it's Alyssa Dare Nelson. So good to be here. It's great because we had a couple of guys who've sort of been here from the beginning, and I really just joined the crew. I'm really excited. I can I announce here, like I'm going to be part of the crew for now going forward, which is really great. So I appreciate being included as a voice in this incredible group of people. And even though I've only been a part of this for just a short period of time, the reason I was so drawn to it was all of the varied voices and willingness to have an uncomfortable conversation. And it's interesting because I had a regular coaching segment on our NBC News here in the Twin Cities for a couple of years. The noon news kind of thing, and so I totally understand the 3-minute segment, right, where you have to kind of get in, get your point made, get out. And I honor that type of conversation too, where it's really just a soundbite. But we have to have the conversation beyond the conversation. It's one thing to be told the news. It's another thing to discuss what do we do with that? And I love this environment for being able to talk about what do we do with that and actually have uncomfortable conversations with people who may or may not agree with our standpoint. And honestly, the more that we disagree, the better solutions and ideas we can come up with because we're coming from different lenses, we're coming from different angles. And I love that and cherish that, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, a healthy debate and discussion is essential to a functioning democracy, and for whatever reason, just how our news media and culture have developed in the past couple decades has really kind of put a roadblock to a lot of that. So I'm happy there's places like the Liberty Show that can exemplify a different way to really tackle some things together. So yeah, absolutely. All right, I can take one more input here, and then I think we're gonna move on to some of our clips to share here.
Hey, Jared, it's Charlie. How are
Hi,
you?
Charlie. I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Great. Hello, everyone on the Liberty Show. Kevin, I just wanted to say, I guess I've sort of fell in the mix indirectly, being that Kevin worked with a coworker of my nephew. So, my nephew came home and he was talking about it one day, and I just somewhat joined. And at first I was like, oh, I'll just, listen to what has to be said. And with all of the diversity and the conversations that we've had and the discussions, I just somewhat fell in love with the show itself. So from that point on, I think I started maybe with the second podcast because I was not on the first one. And, and I've been hooked and enjoy every time that we have conversations. You learn something new every time discussions are said or made, just being able to hash everything out, looking at things from different perspectives. So just want to say that I'm happy to be a part of the show and can't wait for us to continue on, from 2021 and on and beyond. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are very happy and grateful to have you as well. So feeling is mutual, certainly. All right. So I think we can go ahead and jump into some of our clips here. So we got a good amount, and I'll leave some time to discuss what these highlights present after each one. So feel free while the clip is playing to use that raise hand feature or type in the chat that you'd like to comment on this. So we can have a little bit of classic Liberty Show debate and discussion between each of these. So this first clip we have, this is one that Kevin wished to include, and it's certainly one that touches on the core theme of our our podcast and radio show here, and that is liberty. So this is from our episode with Maj Touré right at the beginning when Maj talks about what liberty means to him. So here comes the clip with Maj.
So first, let's find out a little bit about who Maj Touré is. You mentioned, I saw you on another podcast, you're a man of liberty and freedom. Explain to me, what do you mean by you're for liberty and freedom?
Well, it means that I want everyone to have the means to do whatever they choose to do, as long as you're not violating somebody else's body or their personal property. I want everybody to be able to do that. I want you to be able to, I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to, think about it as much. It's yours. It's your freedom. And you are within your liberty to exercise your freedoms the way that you choose to. And I think that if more people view the world under those terms, we'd have a lot less, infringement and a lot less mental enslavement. So that's my view of freedom. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to do what you do. I just have to respect what you do and your space. And I think we got to get back to that lane of living for most people. So we're not infringing and we're not being infringed upon.
I totally agree, man. That's why you're my hero. You sound like me. You sound like my twin. And one thing, our motto here, my motto is to put liberty into action. And I agree with you. We do a lot of talking about freedom and liberty and civil rights, but when it's time to actually implement it, we want to, oh no, but you can't do this, you can't say that. And that's one reason I like you, that you're putting your liberty into action.
All right, that was Maj, and we got a little bit of Kevin there as well. Anyone have any comments to share about that? Anyone want to riff on the idea of putting liberty into action, our sort of cornerstone idea here? All right, if not, I'll move on to our next contribution here. This is one that I myself pulled from our episode a while back on police brutality. And this is a contribution made by Mr. Adam House, who's been on our show a number of times now and a great supporter, a great friend of the podcast. And I thought his discussion of this issue was really insightful and well articulated. So here comes Adam.
And so I think what we have right now is we have a police state that has been amped up on the war on drugs and then given another shot of adrenaline by the war on terror. And now it's just this horribly top-heavy, violent, brutal police state where we have even prosecutors, that are forcing people into these crazy plea deals, filling up our prisons. So now we have mass incarceration. And then the intersection that I mentioned comes from the other side of this, where there is systemic racism in American politics and in American government since the very beginning. And it's played out in different ways through time. For anybody that wants kind of a primer on understanding this, you can watch this movie on Netflix called 13. It'll kind of give you a little bit of the history of how we got to where we are right now. So now let's bring all that where the systemic racism and the brutal, violent police state intersect. And now we see a situation where, it's been obvious to many of us that's been paying attention for years now, that it's almost like it's open game on young black men for any police officers that want to engage in just lynching them in the streets. And what happens is you have qualified immunity that allows the police to get away with it. And it's not just the qualified immunity, but they also have the unions that stand behind them. And because they work, obviously within local government, they usually know the judges, they know the lawyers in town, they know the DA's office, they know the defense, teams in town. They know all these people already, and they're probably in buddies with whoever. And so it's like a good old boys club. And the Thin Blue Line is a really big gang, and they've got a lot of special protections. And what it boils down to for me, is I don't think the protests that we see in the wake of the George Floyd thing, of his killing, I can't discredit these protests in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think they're long overdue. You know, actually, back when Eric Garner was killed, I expected this. You know, I think that the patient long suffering of the poor and minorities, and especially the Black community in the United States, has been, you know, that's it. It's been patient and long suffering. And, you know, I think, you know, the American people in general, we've had every right to rebel for a long time now.
All right, that was Adam House from our wonderful podcast on police brutality, and I see Tim, you got a comment here.
Actually, Louis had one before me, so I'll go right after Louis.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit slow on the draw about raising my hand earlier. Well, I guess just very quickly, Adam made some very salient points there. Also, that documentary you mentioned, 13th, is quite good and quite revealing, so I would recommend that as well. And I recall from that same episode, I think it was the same episode, it went on a spiel later after he spoke about kind of the history of policing in this country, and basically just to kind of echo what Adam was saying, this is what the police have always been like. Like, this is what they were founded in the 1800s to do, specifically to terrorize, you know, poor Black workers, basically, and poor white workers as well. But, you know, like many things, like people get it a lot harder when it comes to these sorts of problems. Yeah, that was a very enjoyable episode. I remember it was a fun, not a fun conversation, but it was an interesting and engaging kind of ongoing one we had.
Yeah, certainly so. That was one where I learned a lot and was really enriched by a lot of the contributions people had. So thank you, Louis. All right, Mr. Smith, you are up.
Well, shout out to our hosts. Actually, we have two. So both of our hosts. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to the panel. Great big shout out to Adam, who is a personal friend. It was great listening to him again. I got so caught up in what he was saying that I started applauding, even though it was recorded in months ago. But that's just how, you know, Adam, when he speaks, it does something for me. And a great big shout out to Maj, a great fighter for liberty. I just want to thank everyone, and especially the Adam Houses. Oftentimes in the liberty movement, if you don't have a big name, you're not recognized. So I just, you know, Adam has a name. He may not be like a Maj Touré or Larry Sharpe at this current point in time, but he's an excellent orator of relaying and conveying the message of liberty. And that's all I had to say. It was a great big shout out to my friend. I was overjoyed listening to him.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm glad I picked that one out. It was well worth reviewing. Certainly, he is very articulate.
My goodness, I did not have a chance to be a part of that episode. But yeah, when we start talking about, you know, qualified immunity and the protections that the Good Old Boys Club provides when other people not only don't have those protections, but are victimized by the people who are in power. And I love how he brought it off the front lines of the police themselves, the policemen and women, but also looked at the prosecutors and in who knows who in the other realms, which points to the system. And one of the biggest things that the Thin Blue Line folks like to talk about is, well, you know, there's one or two racist cops. Fine. We admit to that. We'll get rid of them when we find them. And that the fact of the matter is that the system is the problem. You know, I could go on a whole rant about how defund the police is a really poorly marketed platform that we should have named it something different collectively, like rebuild the police, right? But to the point is that we've got to dismantle the system and rebuild the system so that it's working for folks. And, you know, things like qualified immunity and the fact that the police are militarized. Police are supposed to be peace officers. That's what they're called, right? That's actually what they're supposed to be termed. And yet they're militarized. So there's a disconnect there. And of course we can go back a couple of centuries to see where that was all rooted from. But I love the honest conversation, and this is deep, and it's hurtful, and it's hard, and there's a lot of people that have been traumatized, and so that conversation is going to keep going on forever and ever. But I'm glad that we're having those conversations. And yes, I will third the recommendation on watching The 13th, because it is an excellent documentary.
Thank you for that, Alyssa. Yeah, it's interesting. You always hear these thin blue line, very pro cop kind of supporters talk about, oh, it's only a few bad apples. But if you have a system where the apple barrel stays shut, a few bad apples rots the whole barrel there. So we definitely need change to be able to get those bad actors out and radically change the role and capacity of policing to make our communities better and protect the liberties that American citizens have God-given right to enjoy. So,
I just wanted to add very quickly. You always hear that phrase, "a few bad apples," when you hear like police apologists and bootlickers try to make excuses for the horrible things police do. And they neglect to mention that the full phrase is "a few bad apples spoil the bunch." So it's like, actually, yeah, a few bad apples means that everybody else in that same bunch is complicit. They're part of this too.
And sometimes it's the apple tree that is dropping bad apples.
That too.
That's really the bigger issue at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, do you have a comment as well?
I don't want to rehash that whole show, but it was an excellent show. And one of the points that we brought up was that it's easy for us to pick on the police. And everyone knows that I am no fan of the popo, and I take every opportunity to address them as what they are. But even so, we have to acknowledge that it's not their fault. It's the system. So when the pigs go out there and they occupy, and that's what the police do, they do not patrol Black neighborhoods. They are occupying force in Black neighborhoods. But we've already had that show. But regardless, it's not about a few bad apples. It's not the apples at all. The apples are doing what apples do. It's the system that allows us to grow apples. And when we get rid of the system that allows us to grow apples, then we'll have a totally different thing to talk about. And that's the conversation that we had, was that we need to get out of the business of growing apples. Perhaps we should grow peaches, because that will bring us to a place where there is actual equality. I live in the Atlanta metro. I live downtown Atlanta. And I can tell you that if you go to Buckhead, the police act a totally different way, in a different manner than if you're in South Atlanta. When I'm in Buckhead, I feel less likely that I'm going to get shot by the popo. But when I'm in South Atlanta, it's a totally different story. So why is that? It's not that it's a bad apple that's policing South Atlanta. It's the fact that the system allows the police to act a different way in South Atlanta than it does in Buckhead. So yes, as Adam eloquently brought out, we have to look at the whole system. And the thing about it, we can't talk about dismantling the system, because to dismantle the system means that it can be put back the way that it originally were. What we have to talk about is a whole different way of policing, a whole different way of prosecuting. And there's a friend of the show who said that if there's no victim, there is no crime. And that's what we have to, when we go out to our city council meetings, when we go to our state houses, our state assemblies, and when we go into the voters' booth and we're choosing the lesser of two evils between the Democrats and Republicans, one thing that we have to ask ourselves is this individual in the habit of getting behind, of rallying behind laws and legislation that creates a victim when there is no victim?
Yeah, thank you for that, Tim. Yeah, and you provided an excellent segue into our next clip here, when you were mentioning how disparate the experience of policing or the experience of authority or powers can be. So this clip, I believe, is from our George Floyd episode, and Kevin requested this one. This is my own contribution, actually. I'd written a short piece talking about some of the protesting that had gone on in the past couple months, comparing how sort of the state powers were responding to something like the protest in Michigan against some of the coronavirus restrictions versus how these same powers were responding then to the Black Lives Matter protests in response to the killing of George Floyd. So here's me. Violent protest marked the beginning of America, and the sense of liberty against injustice still runs through our veins today. Yet liberty for whom? The sensibilities of both the privileged public and those who wield political authority will shift at a moment's notice from a deep acknowledgement of the rights of the citizenry to protest with vehemence to a rhetoric of law and order, stating firmly that the protesters must maintain peacefulness and pursue only legal means, while simultaneously utilizing state power via the police to escalate conflict, even at times when protesting remains squarely in the bounds of what is permitted by constitutional rights. These rhetorical sleight of hands, always disconnected from the specific histories leading to deep grievances fueling vicious protest, are very palatable to the average privileged American. For them, human rights are already so obviously guaranteed that situations where it seems that these rights are being denied to other citizens, it is automatically rationalized as their fault. And unless they've actively had relationships and opportunities for education on the experiences of others in this country, are they really wrong in their reasoning? If you can storm a Capitol building with heavy artillery and not face any escalation of violence, what must you conclude about a protest which does lead to escalating violence? Here, the state and its various concrete manifestations are imagined as genuinely neutral. Its actions are fully governed by the letter of the law. And likewise, the options for citizen power against state overreach are delineated. If you don't break the rules, nothing bad could happen. This is, of course, not an accurate paradigm for understanding the very off-the-cuff responses of the state to those protesters whose political goals are judged, for whatever reason, as threatening to the mythos by which the American nation defines itself and asserts its sovereignty and goodness. Where in the Constitution does it say that officers of law are above rule of law? Where in the Constitution does it say that tear gas and rubber bullets may be employed against lawful assemblies? These are not decisions stemming from a concrete legal basis, but ones which are essentially of an improvisational nature to be justified on legal bases after the fact. We must develop eyes to see such situations clearly and realize the deep precarity of such state power asserted over the citizenry. That is why I cannot condemn any of the rioting tactics on a collective level back in my home state. The contract with the state is that they guarantee such things as natural rights and justice, and in return, the populace will subscribe only to those legal means provided by the state for redressing conflict. Yet in the murder of George Floyd, we see both the state gruesomely seize the most basic right, that to life itself, from a citizen on an entirely non-judicial, arbitrary basis. And simultaneously, justice against this infraction is showing little signs of actually materializing. And this is not an isolated incident, but truly a continuation of precedent, both in the Twin Cities in particular and in America generally. Has such justice been ignored by the legal means provided by the state? So, in such a case, the citizenry has every right to assert their law-making power by making transparent that the contract of law and order truly is a two-way agreement. And if the state is going to desecrate this agreement, then the people will retaliate until a new, legitimately functional legal means can be instituted for upholding justice in these cases where the state has previously acted as a barrier to this transcendent value when it has worked to their benefit. Extrajudicial, state-sponsored violence has no place in a country which flies the banner land of the free. These are our neighbors, our loved ones, being callously murdered in broad daylight. There never has been an excuse for such things. Now, the people are saying they will accept no reasons and will not rest until there is legitimate redress to these grievances. Feel their anger. It is more righteous and holy than the decaying mythology of America as a bastion of freedom. This anger has the potential to purify and renew this promise to freedom, if only we allow ourselves the ears to truly hear. All right, that was me. Kevin, why did you choose that clip as one of our highlights? I'm curious to know.
I was just trying to butter you up, and
Sure.
no, I was just getting ready to comment because I think everyone has touched upon it, Alyssa and Tim, especially Jared, that the state cultivates this tree of bad apples. You know, you have to water plants to get them to grow. You have to weed out sometimes the weeds, and they don't want to weed out the weeds. They want to water sometimes negative circumstances. And, you know, you just brought us together so eloquently that, you know, sometimes our state, the system, the powers that be, the government, let's be very specific here, they water, you know, to grow these trees with bad apples. They cultivate that environment, and that's not cool. And you brought a great, you know, a great point out that, you know, if you're going to have this law and order, it needs to be, you know, it can't just be one-sided. So I thought that was just really, really profound, and hopefully we can begin to live it and see things change in our nation.
Yeah, hopefully so. All right, I see our friend David down in Florida has a response for me. I'm all ears, David.
It wasn't necessarily a response, but you talk so well, but you write even better. You put a tremendous amount of thought into what you wrote. Have you written on the subject before?
Not directly. I think that was really the sort of event that really inspired me to put some pen to paper on this idea of how state power can respond differently in different circumstances, and kind of what are the ways it functions there. But certainly I'd written some kind of tangentially related things about government power, about sort of oppressive forces. So it wasn't entirely out of left field for me.
You know, since we have 6 to 8 usual faces, everybody brings something different to the table, and the presence that they have when they're on the air. Taj Duray, the way he commands himself, I wish I had that presence over a microphone. Mm-hmm. And he was quick to respond. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he wasn't going to be bullied by anybody when he had the podium. And Tim, I love Tim, the way he can take both sides of an argument. He reminds me of somebody that I grew up with and then went to college with him. And one week he'd be arguing for communism, and the next week he'd be arguing the democracy republic. And people that understand the issues and have that tremendous mind, they have a way of carrying themselves. Alicia, her presence on a microphone is amazing. What I can't help but laugh about is when a young lady, I don't know if it was Jackie, when she responded to Tim, "What do you want? What do you want, Tim?" But thank you all for sharing your strong points and helping me to learn at the same time.
Great. No, I wanted to also, I hate to expose you, but Jared is kind of like partially Caucasian. I know everybody thinks he's black, but he's a white. But no, I always call him my favorite white boy. But I really think that's important, that to know that, you know, Jared as a white male in today's society made that statement. Because people think the Black Lives Matter is all black people, it's all people of color, it's all liberals, it's all people to the left. But there are some white people who understand this dilemma and see the truth and see our nation for what it really is. And I just wanted to bring that out because that's what's going to bring about change. It's going to take, honestly, some white people to stand up for some of the problems that they, not specifically, but, you know, collectively have created. And they're going to have to address some of that. So I compliment you, Jared. And I don't know if you're black or white today. I get confused. But no, but I think that that's a really good point to bring out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely so, Kevin. Thank you.
To piggyback on that a little bit, it's not my quote, so I can't claim it, but racism is not a black issue for white folks to empathize with. It is an issue that white folks created and need to actively solve. And I think as we've seen more and more white folks, for lack of a better term, start to wake up, which waking up should be and is a lifelong process. You don't have one woke moment and then suddenly you're cured of the white sea that you've been swimming in all of your life. But if we're willing to just have these conversations and go, how might this affect? And when it comes to the riots, and you can hear, if you really truly listen, you can hear both sides of the quote argument, right? That the challenge is that our society has gotten stuck in this binary us versus them conversation, when I can very much empathize with a business owner who had their business burned down in a riot. Like, that's horrible, right? And it's not just the insurance that's going to cover the building that will be rebuilt. It's so much heart and soul that goes into those, oftentimes mom and pop shops. I can definitely empathize with that. And I can empathize with the anger and frustration that boiled over that may have caused that. And also, we need to look at who actually caused the fire and where did that spark start. And, so if we stop with the conversation being, it was wrong, the riots were wrong, or the riots were justified, we're missing the entire point. And so anyway, I know that's part of a different, bigger conversation, but I just wanted to call to honor Jared, yes, as a white male, for speaking up and really looking at the conversation as, from your perspective, to really listen, but also that this is not a Black issue for Black folks to solve. This is a white issue that the white community, whether it was your ancestors or whether your ancestors came over, on immigrated 30 years ago, this is still a system that we need to fix.
Thank you, Alyssa. Yeah, that's such a pertinent point, and that's hopefully what we can do through some of these conversations on the Liberty Show. I hope that since we do have this wide variety of voices, when we're all able to talk together, it's maybe a bit more approachable for people than something that very clearly is woke and like strongly trying to educate in a certain way. That can be intimidating for people. So, I mean, it'd be great if people could just push through that intimidation, but that's often very difficult. So hopefully we can make some easier avenues for people who might not have the courage to get there otherwise. So
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And please forgive me of my ignorance, but can someone please define what being woke is?
I'll give it a stab here. I feel like means this sort of very progressive understanding of systematic inequality. It's kind of become this almost like pejorative term at this point, where like people are like, "Oh, you're so woke," when someone is like trying to show how much they know about how bad Black people have had it in America or something like that. So I think it's complicated in how it's used nowadays, but that's basically how I've come to understand it. Dr. Dana, I see you got your hand up. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say a few words about that. I'm in contact with the academic community, and what I'm concerned about is wokeness, and I guess the right term is applied postmodernism that's in academia and is seeping into corporations and into government. They don't really care about racism. They don't really care about transphobia. They're out for power, and they will use those issues and people as tokens to try to get to that power. I mean, we've seen it in the past that I've never seen such a militant, I would call it a witch's brew of applied postmodernism. It's a combination of neo-Marxism, Leninism, postmodernism, and radical feminist collectivism. And we really need to be aware that what they're really after is to establish themselves in a power position. And we've seen historically when people like that get into power position, first thing they do is crack down on people's liberties, and the first people they crack down on are the minorities and the people that they want to get rid of from their society point of view. So I'm concerned about that going into the future, that I see this problem coming on. I've been trying to warn trans people not to fall victim to becoming poster children for this movement, but I see it creeping more and more into lots of institutions. And I hesitate to, raise the red flag of, anti-communism, because that's, it can be seen as being hysterical unnecessarily, but that's what these people believe in. And I see them trying to entrench themselves under a lot of institutions. So when we try to fashion remedies for racism and transphobia and other ills in our societies, we need to make sure that they don't misuse that energy to ensconce themselves in power.
Yeah, that's a fascinating dynamic that's going on with all these issues. That could certainly be a podcast in itself. What are the right ideological allies for promoting liberty, especially for marginalized people, as they say?
Well, we have to be very careful to be for things, and the things that we should be for should maintain our liberties and our enlightenment. But most of the energy from academia is against things, not for things that will improve the situation.
Right. Yeah. The postmodernist ideal of deconstruction. That's what they have, certainly. So makes sense in that context. Where's the construction?
Right. And if they did construct something, we probably wouldn't like it.
Yeah, yeah, perhaps not, especially if it's the one orthodox sort of woke construction that everyone needs to subscribe to
and I should say these people are ruthless in suppressing freedom of speech, and I talked about tokenism before, and their other mantra is equity as opposed to equality. That they don't want people to have equality, they want them to have equity, meaning that everybody gets paid the same no matter what they contribute. And as I recall from my history, that there's something about Marxism in there that rings true.
Yeah, we'll have to put this down for a future show for sure. I see, Alyssa. Do you have something to weigh in with on here?
Yeah, just a follow-up comment, because I was the one who brought up the term woke.
Sure.
So just to kind of circle it back around, and Dana, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I wholeheartedly agree that wokeism is so often weaponized, and anything that's good can be weaponized. And I think that's something that's really important for people with, I'm putting air quotes here, good intentions, to understand that, a knife is really good for cutting up a bell pepper, but it can also kill somebody. So it can be a tool and it's good, or it can be used to destruct and destroy. And so I think that one of the tendencies that I see, and sometimes I even catch myself there because I love solving problems, right, is people who wake up, who realize, oh my gosh, I'm seeing something that I've never seen before. And now I have all the answers. So I'm just going to go in and solve this, when they're not inviting people to the table who this problem is affecting. And so I did want to clarify that while I believe that this is that systemic racism, for instance, is an issue that white folks need to step up and solve, I certainly didn't mean alone. That we have to do that in concert, but we have to take personal responsibility for it. Again, this is a far deeper topic, but to tokenism, to saviorism, to centering, all of those issues, they spark up as soon as people think that they're quote woke, and now, well, with this new enlightenment, they can go in and solve the problem because now they understand it, and it's just not quite that simple.
Yeah, the line between white allyship and white saviorism can be thin and difficult to navigate. Yeah, thanks everyone for bringing up such important points. But I think we'll head on to our next highlight clip here, so we don't run out of time. So we got a couple good ones from just last show. Everyone had some really insightful comments here. So we're going to go to Mr. Louis with his comment here.
What's the more plausible explanation here? Did Trump lose through no fault of his own because there was this vast, nebulous conspiracy working to undermine him? Or is it that Trump was never a popular or well-liked candidate to begin with? Because there's that 30 to 40% of the population of like hardcore MAGA people who will, ride and die with him no matter what. But outside of that, I mean, his approval rating has always been pretty bad, like below 50. He didn't win the popular vote the first time, even though Hillary was very maligned. Polls generally indicate that the Republicans' neoconservative policies are just not popular with, the general populace. And like even in districts that went red in 2016, they were often won on, no pun intended, very razor-thin margins as a result of gerrymandering. Because again, the Republican candidates generally have a harder time winning in fair fights. Is it that hard to believe that he lost the popular vote again, especially after his hideous quasi-genocidal bungling of the COVID response? I mean, I would think that over 200,000 people dying on your watch because of your bad decisions would put a dent in your popularity. Wouldn't you think?
All right, that was Louis. Any comments? Any follow-up for that one?
Well, I have to speak up. Jared?
Yes, sir.
May I speak, sir, host?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm laughing because Louis is so hilarious, but, I'm sitting here, I've been here since day one, but it's so funny, guys. Louis came on the show about, I don't know, February, March, but he would not say anything for the first 4 episodes. And finally, now when he does talk, I'm like, wow, is that the same Louis? But he really sounded like he meant what he said. And I just was laughing, not at him, but with him, because, it's really funny. After you've had 200,000 deaths, what do you think you're going to be popular? Come on, get real. But some of our politicians are not real.
Yeah, but we got to revise that number to 300,000 now, unfortunately, as well.
Don't remind us. But
yeah, I guess.
Louis.
I guess sometimes I'm kind of reluctant to speak up when I'm participating in group discussions because I'm just sort of socially anxious generally. But once I get started on something, as Jared can attest to from when we were in school, I can be very fiery about certain things.
Oh, we're glad to have your fire here, and glad you've become more open and comfortable getting your voice heard on the Liberty Show.
I just like having the opportunity to, rant at people about the many thoughts in my head, I guess. And also it's nice to communicate with other human beings after the last several months of despair and isolation. And it's going to be we're almost to 300,000 deaths, right? I think the speculated death toll for the Civil War is 400,000. So we're almost there in replacing that as the greatest travesty in American history with something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly a very, very tragic year we've had. Yet we're here on the Liberty Show, and we can come together as community here. So hopefully there's some sparks of light in our life still, even amidst some horrendous historical happenings. So.
I'm trying not to be a downer or anything, or to damp on the mood.
Yeah, sometimes speaking truth can be kind of depressing, though. So, all right, so we're going to go on to a highlight that Miss Charlie suggested, also from our last podcast. And this was Damon's contribution in a similar vein. So, if you have comments that are still forming, you'll probably figure out how to respond when I play this one. So Here is Damon.
Trump is he's many things, but I think a great president is not accurate because what he is, he's a master of chaos. And I think what he's done for the past 4 years has just, run the most dysfunctional presidency that we've ever known. And we can say that the media has it out for him. Okay, fine. I'll take that because the media does have a liberal bias. But at the same time, we've got to understand that Republicans always like to, say that personal responsibility. Well, what level of responsibility does Trump have? Because let's say I'm in the media, and if you call me a enemy of the people, and you've never at any point in time tried to give me a fair shake, then no, I'm not going to give you a fair shake. So it's a yin or yang type situation. And furthermore, when we talk about the coronavirus, to Louis' point, when you make wearing a mask a wedge issue, and basically you've got people that you may not agree with mask wearing, okay, fine, whatever, but to the point where if you're out in public, and let's say somebody who's a Trump supporter doesn't wear a mask, let's say they have the coronavirus, well, they can be a super spreader now. Right. And so then you've got people that want to say, well, I want to go out to restaurants. I want to go out and eat. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to live life as normal. Well, we can do that if we get the coronavirus under control. And if wearing a mask can help to, alleviate the spread or at least slow it down, then what's the problem with that? Right. I personally, as a libertarian, okay, do I believe it should be mandated and enforced? No. But from a high level, if we have proper leadership, say, look, y'all, I understand, it's inconvenient. I know we don't like to do it, but this for the sake of getting us back on board, back to attending sporting events and concerts, wear a mask and let's get under control. That way we can get back to everyday life. But with Trump being his belligerent, POS self, he says, hey, we're not wearing a mask. And even when he got the coronavirus himself, for the cameras, he gets in front of the cameras and immediately rips it off, making it seem like, oh, look at me, I'm big, strong, tough guy. But I'm like, dude, you have an opportunity as the president. And because he's a reality show star, that's what he's been for 4 years, is a reality show president. Everything he does in front of the cameras is for a specific purpose for his people, for his cult. Because anything he says to them, they take it with a grain of salt and they run with it. Right. So if he says don't wear a mask, they don't wear a mask. And they think, well, it's an infringement on my rights and all this other stuff. But what about the infringement on the people who are trying to live? What about the older people who may have autoimmune diseases where you may be a super spreader? You don't know it because Mr. Tough Guy Twitter fingers over here told you not to wear a mask. Right. So this idea that he's the greatest president, I refute that. I can't take it. No.
All right. That was Damon. I see he's making us all smile here. Yeah. What an articulate guy. So it was Miss Charlie who picked that clip out. What was your sense, Miss Charlie, about why that was such a highlight for you?
I don't know. I just think Damon generally is always on point. He has a tendency to always say the things that I totally agree with. But I will say, going back to Louis, I was laughing a little bit when Louis was like, he lost the popular vote the first time. What made him think that he didn't win it this go around as well? And I'm thinking to myself, he doesn't get it. You know what I mean? The president himself, if having a conversation with him, I'm sure he would think, oh, yes, I did win it. You know what I mean? Because he lives in such a altered state of mind. I just think, all the time, Damon, for the most part, is always on point with me. We have a tendency, I think, to see things his way. I sometimes see things Tim's way. I think we just come at it from a different direction. We want the same endpoint, but we're just going at it. Our routes are totally different. But that's why I pretty much just chose, a podcast of a conversation that Damon had, because I totally agree with what he's generally saying 98% of the time. So.
Certainly a sharp mind we have in our midst.
Yes, he is.
I see you have a response as well, Louis.
Yeah, I guess just firstly, echo everything Charlie said. We'll just talk about stop the steal and election fraud and whatnot. It just seems so preposterous that we're still keeping this charade going a month later, even though it could not be more obvious in every way that Trump and his idiot cronies brought all of this on themselves. I mean, it's really, from the very beginning, if Trump had just listened to his advisors and, followed their advice and generally just tried to at least act like he was, doing something to fight the pandemic, rather than just shitting a hole straight through the bed with every decision he made, he could have easily won his re-election bid, despite, some of the issues I mentioned with him being unpopular. Yeah, I don't know. All the fraud stuff is just ridiculous. And I can't believe it. This is like, we're still hearing about it.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for that. It's always interesting to see how sort of libertarians respond to Republicans versus Democrats and Trump in particular. I've always been very confused when I see a libertarian who is at all supportive of Trump's presidency. I mean, certainly you can always find some aspect of any political figure that might be redeemable or in line with your ideology. But I mean, so many things he's done have, at least from my vantage point, been radically anti-liberty, trying to overturn democratic election results, being towards the top of that list, certainly. But I mean, even things like the Second Amendment stuff, I hear he has not been great, and that's like one of the pretty like classic
totally
libertarian
sucked.
issues. Yeah. Thank you for the summary, Tim.
Trump has
we
been more
were expecting
anti-gun than Obama. It's shocking to think about.
Oh, I can't believe Louis just said that, but that is indeed correct. Trump has been terrible on the Second Amendment. I'm not a fan of bump stocks. I don't see the point of it, but that is a tool, if you will, that's protected under the Second Amendment. And the Orange Mussolini, by executive order, it was not even through an act of Congress. Orange Mussolini made bump stocks illegal. So even though, and I take personal offense, Jared, to your point that you don't understand how a libertarian could support Trump's reelection, I was wholeheartedly hoping that Trump would be reelected, even though he was never going to get my vote. But either way, he's been terrible on the Second Amendment. And yes, I'm not a fan of the Obama presidency either, but he was better on the Second Amendment than Trump has been.
Any other comments before we move on here?
I think it's interesting. It will be interesting to see what will happen to the Republican Party. I guess I haven't point blank said where I stand politically because, quite frankly, I specifically don't identify with a particular political party because I don't think that what we have is adequate. There's certain aspects of the Libertarian Party, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party that I lean towards. So if I had to say, I would say I'm left leaning. I was a proud Biden voter this time around, but I wouldn't call myself a Democrat. And what I think is interesting is that we have a very clear Trumpism, and we have this Republican Party that is imploding because they are trying with white knuckles to hold on to the power that is associated with Donald Trump. And the fact of the matter is that it will implode. I think, this is my anticipation, the entire Republican Party as it is. And so, what is going to rise from the ashes is really my question. We've got the Supreme Court, I'm not even going to call it a ruling, dismissal of Trump saying, well, the Supreme Court we should Texas suing, what was it, Pennsylvania or whatever it was ridiculous. And the Supreme Court saying we're not partisan. This isn't what we do. And I was really proud. I was a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. I'm really proud of the Supreme Court for staying neutral. But what Trump has done post-election, if anybody has studied psychology and understands what a narcissistic, specifically a malignant narcissist, how they're going to behave, none of this is surprising. He doesn't have it in him to say, I lost, to actually concede. It isn't in his system. And I believe he I don't think he thinks he won, but he will absolutely hold on to that till forever. Because if you can convince your victims, which is what narcissists end up doing, is creating victims that they're crazy and that you're right, you've won. And so that's like, none of his behavior is surprising. And it's just a matter of, for the love of God, can we just get this man out of office and, try to redeem some semblance of government. But I'm grateful that he's pressed on the democratic system. I think that's healthy. Let's see. Do we have cracks that are gonna let water in the boat? And there certainly have been cracks. Ultimately, this is my very optimistic hope. Democracy will win, and will please never, 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 ever again elect a president that is clearly diagnosably a malignant narcissist, folks. Can we just not do that ever again?
Yeah, that would be ideal, at least from my vantage point here. Did you have some final words, Tim, before we move on to our last clip here?
I just have a question for Alyssa. I don't think I've heard anyone state that they are a proud Biden voter. I'm just curious, what's so great about Biden?
What's great? This is how I've explained Biden, and I think he might actually surprise us. This is, again, I'm an eternal optimist, but I truly believe he's sort of he's the nice guy that you date after you've come out of an abusive relationship. I don't believe that he is going to rock a lot of boats, and I believe genuinely that he has a good heart. Yes, we can get into a big, long conversation about how he's been in politics for 47 years, et cetera, and what has he gotten done. And, but he's also been in Congress. So let's talk about how Congress as a system doesn't get anything done. And yes, he was a VP and all of that stuff, right? So I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that he's the perfect guy, but I also have been watching and seeing how he's responded to Trump and to all the Trump cronies and everything else. And he has maintained his composure. He has maintained compassion. He has maintained respect. And I think that is something that we desperately need. It started out that I was going to vote for him simply to get Trump out of office because I believe Trump is such a dangerous human being. But I also have hopes about what his presidency will look like.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa. I see Charlie has a hand.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly say to Tim, sometimes I don't think it's really that, what was so great about Biden, it was just look who he was up against. And to me, at the end of the day, he's looking like Camelot to me compared to Trump. So it's not so much, what's so great about Biden, because I'm sure, there are certain things that I can disagree with him on. But when I'm comparing him or he's, running against Trump, it was a no-brainer. I don't even understand for those that did still vote for Trump, as Louis was stating, he wasn't, very popular, didn't get the popular vote, but he has his following. And I just want to quickly, and it's so scary because I was reading an article today and it was this rally here in Atlanta. People were trying to get folks out to vote for Jon Ossoff or something of that nature. And somebody came up to the guy at the rally and asked, what were they doing? And he goes, well, we're just trying to get people registered to vote or whatever, to come out to vote for Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. And this, I'm assuming Trump supporter or whatever, socked him in his face. And I hate to say, to me, those are the type of individuals that are following, as she stated, this narcissistic person. So it's not how great Biden is. It's just we had an idiot that he had to run against. And to me, it just was a no-brainer for it to be Biden, praying to be the next president, and thankfully so. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Charlie. And once again, we have been provided a perfect segue to our next clip here. Our most requested highlight, our infamous showdown, one could say, between Tim and Tammy. Sorry, Tim, we could not. Everyone was dying to hear this one again. So anyway, here they are.
I had to comment, I'm sorry, on the gentleman about keeping Trump in office. That never, ever will happen in my book. I would take the less of the two evils than to have that still stay in office. That man said last night, as if to say to shoot and kill. And that is one thing Biden might not be the best, but he's better than what we have now. I will never, ever vote and put him back in office. Never. And that's my last word on that.
Ma'am, with respect, you don't have to vote for him.
Oh, no word, I won't.
Just unemploy me too.
Oh, you don't have to.
And unemploy other Black folks either. I have a question for you. And with respect, when Obama was in office, did your quality of life improve?
Yes, it did.
Has your quality of life, meaning income, your wealth,
Yes.
how you're feeling, has your
It
wealth decreased or increased while Trump has been in office?
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't decreased?
Since Trump been in there, ain't nothing it's been the same. What has he done? What has he done for black people? What has Trump done for black people? What have he done for black people? What have he done for blacks or brown people or poor people?
I'll tell you what he's done for me. I'll tell you. What he's done for black people is he's revealed to all black and brown people that politicians aren't to be trusted, whether they're Democrat or Republican.
And that include himself too. That include himself too.
Yes, but the great thing about Trump is that Trump shows you that he's a snake. Whereas the Democrats,
I don't need no snake up there. I don't need no snake. I don't need no snake up there. I don't need no snake.
You have, ma'am, with respect, is there anyone in your family who's been locked up for drugs?
No, sir, they haven't. I'm lucky.
Okay.
I'm the lucky one.
You are exceptionally blessed that you haven't experienced the snake that is biting.
You know, that's your opinion.
I applaud. That's not my opinion. It's fact. He is the architect of the Clinton. He's the architect of the Clinton crime bill, which is responsible for locking up black men, black women. That's Biden. That wasn't Trump. That was Clinton. That wasn't Trump. That was
you talk about stuff, sir. You talk about back in the 90s. Things had to be done. I mean, come on now. Let's be real.
Lady, I know you're not telling me that putting us on the plantation had to be done.
You on the plantation? Still on the plantation? You ain't never got on the plantation.
Caging us
on
is
the plantation.
That's
you
exactly
still on the plantation, sir. Still on the plantation.
You are
That's one thing I say about. You are one of the example of one of these. You are one of the example of what Malcolm X talk about these house Negroes. You are one of them. One of these Negroes that don't think they don't get somewhere. They think they don't get something. Don't get something. You are one of them, sir. You are. I'm sorry to call you out for what it is, baby. I am sorry. Sorry about that. But I would never, I would take Biden any day. I would take Biden any day. And that's one thing you will never take from me. You will never take my vote. I don't give a darn who you are. You will
both
never
of y'all
take that
are right, though.
Ma'am, you have broken my heart by calling me a house nigger.
Well, that's what you are, sir. I'm sorry. That's what you are.
Well, if this house nigger may respond,
don't respond.
I'd rather serve in the house of a master that tells me I'm a nigger than in the house of a master who tells me I'm somebody when he treats me like a nigger.
Oh my God.
All right, that was our clip. Wow, what a clip. No, really, I mean, even though that was a heated exchange, I empathize a lot with both Tim and Tammy in this, and so getting to hear that meeting of minds was actually really helpful to navigate this issue. So I see we have some comments here. Miss Charlie, do you want to take the first stab?
Oh, actually, I think my hand was just up from the last time.
Before?
All I could think of, what a memory. That's all I could say. And, and it's funny because listening to it, I hear Kevin just laughing all in the background.
Yeah.
So, it was passionate. Let me say that.
Definitely.
It was a passionate conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, Kevin, you were one of the individuals who requested this clip. Besides the sparks that were flying, was there a particular reason?
Well, this really changed the trajectory of our show. We were another little mediocre, lame podcast, but when she called Till House, the gloves came off, and ever since then, our show has just went a whole different direction. And I compliment Tammy for that, and Tim, because honestly, there's so many podcasts, so many political shows where people are just talking and they're fake. It's Hollywood, they're entertainment. This was not fake, guys. Me and Jared was both like, oh my God, how do we stop it? What do we do? But it was really, it really changed our show. And from that day to this, we have not run away from controversy or from, using prolific language. So it was just awesome though. But it was also because she was for real, Tim was for real. And I don't know. It was so hilarious though. I mean, that's why I love this show. But can I ask Tim,
Yes.
how do you feel being called a house nigga?
Then or now?
Let me ask you, are you a house nigga? I mean, I was like, what? I wasn't prepared for that. And you guys have to know I'm usually prepared for everything, right, Tim? I wasn't prepared for that.
I don't think anyone was prepared for that. That really, listen, it has to be said that Tammy is an excellent individual. Love Tammy. But that is what the question was asked at the beginning of the show. What is this experience to us? And that's what this experience is to me. It's that if I had to describe the show, it would be that clip. That's it. We can talk about liberty and how great liberty is, and the Constitution is so awesome, and we can get into a circle jerk with Mises and Hayek. But at the end of the day, that's what the show is about. It's about people with differing point of views being able to come to the table and just let it all hang out. And that's the only way that we're ever going to have meaningful conversation. That's the only way we're ever going to have a meeting of the minds. And as Ms. Charlie stated earlier, she doesn't always agree with me, but we always get there. And that's the thing. I'm not always going to agree with Ms. Charlie. I'm not always going to agree with you. I'm not always going to agree with Dr. Dana, Alyssa. That's not the point. The point is that we take this journey together and we end at a place where we understand each other's point of view. And that road's going to be bumpy, as that clip demonstrated. But as long as we get there and we understand exactly where the other person is, it's all good. And that's all I ever expected, is that we would have an opportunity to take that journey. As you stated, other shows, it's a kumbaya thing. Oh, we're just going to talk with people who think like us. Oh, we're just going to talk with people who will agree with us. And nothing ever gets said. And there's never any conversation that provokes action. And that's what we're about. We're about provoking action.
Amen,
you don't have to like me, and I don't have to like you. But as long as we are stirred up together in concert, in unison, to effect change, hey, I'm all for it. And that's what she did. She got us all riled up. She got us all stirred up. And look what it did. It literally changed the projection of our show. And I'm very thankful to Tammy.
Well, let me say that because, Tim, I mean, this is really, guys, we're laughing about this, but when people listen at us, when we have to audition to be on some of these radio stations, and they love it. They're like, you guys really talk like that? And I want to piggyback, and I don't know how much time Jared, the host, is going to give me, but if you want to comment, Alyssa or Dr. Dana, but I love Louis said, we talk about real shit on this show. And, we really do. And people love that, because I hear everybody saying we need to have conversations. I don't agree. I think we need real conversations. The problem is, Tim, so we've been having these kumbaya conversations. No, we need some real conversations and to talk about the real stuff. And I think that's what Dr. Dana was talking about when he was talking about some of the postmodern, we want to talk about all this bull crap, and I totally agree with Alyssa. We need conversation, but we need real conversation, because if we don't, we're going to be right back. That's the problem with Trump. We ain't had no real conversation. We just been going along with that bull crap.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm always proud of the opportunities this show can provide, both for us as the participants and for the audience listening at home, to see what some dialogue with some sparks can look like, but still end up being productive and provocative in a good way, not in a needlessly sort of offensive kind of way. So
I've been watching or listening to a different podcast. I don't know if I should name drop it here, but it's a really good podcast. So, but they were talking about in-group and out-group, right? And how hard it is to stand up against the in-group when there's something that you don't agree with. I've seen this happen, whether somebody Black is called an Uncle Tom, or I have Republican friends who have been Trump supporters and have openly voted for Trump, et cetera. And the attacks from their community, and I'm putting their in quotes, because again, it's but you're one of us. How can you as a Black person vote for Trump? And I think that's really the scary part. And this is why these conversations are so important, and why I honor all of you on this show so much, because it's hard to say, gosh, I don't agree with that perspective. And, for Tim to say, God, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm hoping he gets back in office, which makes my skin crawl, because that's the last thing I want. But then, to be like, now why is that? Right. And so to understand what that's all about, what's the Stephen Covey quote, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And, these conversations are hard. And for people on the listening end to hear us really rumble, to use a Brene Brown term, I think is so cool. I think that's great. And, so I hope to get in fights with all of y'all.
Hopefully, next show maybe. Wonderful. Any final thoughts here as we come to wind down?
As a leader, I believe in appreciating other people, and that's what makes this show so beautiful. It's not just Kevin, it's all of us, and we are a team. And I do thank you guys. I really, I have to thank Damon, and he started it all, and Tim, and then before there was a Liberty Show, we was fighting y'all for this stuff. And Jared has joined us, and Dr. Dana and them brought in all that expertise. But in closing, I do want to, Kevin, when I thought of Dr. Damon, we got all these beautiful shows and lots of comments. But sometimes we don't talk about the negatives. And just in the few minutes we have left, there were three really that we got that were very controversial. When we did the show on reparations, a lot of people didn't agree, even libertarians, that should be done. But we actually lost some of our liberal leftist friends when we talked about the Black Guns Matter. We actually had some sponsors quit sponsoring us because they could not support a show that promoted guns. But we've got a lot of comments on our LGBT show, because me and a lot of my holy roly Christian holiness Pentecostal friends didn't understand how I could allow those type of people. And we actually had some comments calling them degenerates and sodomites, which I don't even know what all those words mean. So what do you guys think of that? That some of the shows that are also controversial, that we don't get compliments on. What do you guys think of those? Some of those topics?
Yeah, anybody? I think it's indicative of some of the kind of the rough state our culture's in, that someone can't listen to a show with a variety of perspectives and have to leave a comment using words like degenerate or slurs, and that's not good. Though we need to find a way to reach people like that better. So perhaps that can be one of our 2021 goals, to be able to build some bridges that people could come along on, and hopefully change some minds for the better, or if not, at least as Tim was saying, be able to take a journey together and at least come away with some kind of deeper understanding that allows us to work together, be human together, and keep on in life, even across these kinds of really hard divides.
Especially, with the LGBT one. I don't know if Dr. Damon want to comment before we get off, but it perplexes me how many Blacks that are pro, equality, and they want all of the civil rights, but they don't want to include LGBT rights or other people's rights, and that just blew my mind. And that might be a whole nother show, but I don't know. You want to comment, Dr. Dana, real quick, or what do you think?
Well, actually, I'll say something positive, and that is the transgender people that advocates have always joined in on these kind of civil rights causes, like immigration. There are a lot of trans people who are immigrants, and you know, and there are a lot of Black people who are discriminated against, who are trans. So I think, you know, when one group has trouble, the other groups ought to pull together. But there are barriers between us in terms of understanding. Most people don't understand what being transgender means. So that's the kind of thing we need to work on.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I hope they want to understand it. That's one thing this show is about. Any final comment, guys? I want to thank Jared. He did a great job as a co-host. I hope y'all don't fire me now. Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. It was a fun opportunity to put on some new shoes here, so to speak.
And if just as a precursor to next year, guys, you know we're on the radio in New York now, all the way up into Canada, up into Alberta, Canada. We're going to be coming on in Minneapolis, St. Paul next year. But we're really upping our game. We're talking to senators about being on. We've got some famous activists, more famous people, more noted people, authors, and different things that are going to be on. But if you guys have any topics you want to talk about, I know Alyssa is going to do a show with her, maybe and her husband. It's going to be really interesting. I won't spoil that for you. But we are looking, if you guys want to co-host a show and actually do a show yourself, we would love. I know Dr. Dana is going to be doing one on her postmodernism. I don't know how to say it right. So anyway, if you want to lead a show, just let me know. It's not all about me, and I hope that that's one thing that we bring out. But thank you, Jared. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, everyone. It was great having you on, and yeah, good night.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, happy holidays.
Stay safe.